Monday night, Kimmel spoke about the Republican response to Kirk's killing, saying, quote, "The MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving." FCC Chairman Brendan Carr described those remarks yesterday as the sickest conduct possible, adding that the FCC could move to revoke ABC affiliate licenses as a punishment. Just a few hours later, the biggest owner of ABC-affiliated stations, Nexstar, announced it would preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live for the foreseeable future, citing Kimmel's comments about the killing of Kirk. Around the same time, Sinclair, which owns and operates 30 ABC stations, also announced it would no longer carry Kimmel's show. And a short time after that, a spokesman for ABC said in a statement that the late-night program will be preempted indefinitely, but did not explain the decision. President Trump praised the move on social media, posting in part, quote, "Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done." So, Willie, we're going to kind of go through. There are a lot of different facets to this story and a lot of questions.
And there's a business facet to this story, just as there was with the Colbert story a couple months ago. We should note last month, Nexstar announced plans to acquire one of its rivals, Tegna, for $6.2 billion. That deal, expected to close in the second half of the next year, would require the FCC to relax the national ownership cap that limits how many stations one company can own in the United States. FCC Chairman Carr has suggested in the past he is willing to raise or eliminate that long-standing cap. If the deal goes through, it would further consolidate station ownership across the United States. Let's bring in Ben Smith. Ben, you've interviewed Brendan Carr a couple of months ago. I should point out he, in the past, has spoken very clearly and forcefully about the need for independence in newsrooms, for example, that the government should not be reaching into a newsroom or perhaps into a comedy show, that the audience should decide if they want to turn away. But here what we have is the chairman of the SEC going on a podcast yesterday saying we can do this the hard way or the easy way on a podcast. We saw this chain of events from Nexstar and then ABC and then Brendan Carr congratulating Nexstar for having the courage to pull Jimmy Kimmel off the air.
Yeah, and then when I talked to Carr in February at our Semaphore event in D.C., I was trying to sort of establish a bit of common ground in a way, and because I think one thing that historically Americans agree on is that the biggest threat to free speech is from the government, of whichever party. The First Amendment is written to restrain the government from cracking down on speech. And I sort of said to him, just to set up the conversation, don't you think, whatever else we're talking about, I think basically the thing that Americans mostly worry about is a government crackdown on speech. Don't you think people like you, or the regulators, are the people we should be most worried about? And he said no. He thinks, in his experience in the last few years, the biggest threat to speech was the big social media companies. And I do think there's a really deep shift in the way that people in the Trump administration, and honestly, based on their personal experience, right, starting with the president of getting thrown off social media platforms, I mean, the way they see speech is via their own experiences in the late 2010s, the early 2020s of fighting with social media platforms. And now they feel like, look, they did it to us, we're going to do it to them. Don't worry about so much about these legal details.
Now, Will, I mentioned Brendan Carr. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr was named to the position by President Trump last year after rising through the ranks at the agency. He's long spoken out against government censorship and for the freedom of speech. In 2019, Carr posted on social media, quote, "Should the government censor speech it doesn't like? Of course not. The FCC does not have a roving mandate to police speech in the name of the public interest." In 2021, he wrote, quote, "A newsroom's decision about what stories to cover and how to frame them should be beyond the reach of any government official." In 2022, Carr posted, quote, "Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship. In 2023, he said, quote, free speech is the counterweight. It is the check on government control. That is why censorship is the authoritarian's dream. And yet, here was Carr in an interview yesterday, right before ABC announced they were pulling Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air.
You know, when you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. Frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, you know, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. A very reasonable, minimal step that can be taken. I mean, obviously, look, there's calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think, you know, you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. And again, you know, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at.
So what does this mean? We can do this the easier way or the hard way?
Yeah, I mean, authoritarian's dream. To quote himself, this is what happens when you start censoring speech. Comedians are, we've heard the warnings. If the comedians can't joke about the government in charge, that's a very deeply slippery slope. And we should know this comes after just this move last night. And Steve, we'll get to the business dealings in just a moment. But like, this comes after we heard from J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller and other members of the administration that they were going to use the Kirk assassination could be used as a pretense to crack down on opposition. And in the way that this president and his administration view opposition, that includes the media. That includes people on TV who they don't like. So, Steve, talk to us more, though, about the business aspects of this. We have seen a number of occasions of media companies buckling to pressure from President Trump.